They called them survival snacks, but made honest meals when times were desperate. Grocery stores didn't promote them. Why would they? If Aunt Clara learned how to turn stale crackers into mock apple pie or bake onion stuffed with peanut butter, she didn't need to buy from the dairy or bakery aisle. They taught families to stretch a single loaf or turn a 40-cent block of gelatin into dinner. A crack of the fork into the sour-sweet slice of mock apple pie. No apples, just Ritz crackers, gave that golden nostalgia. And so did the shock of mayonnaise on peanut butter bread, a southern staple in ration-era skies of scarcity. Imagine squeezing a baked onion, stuffing it with peanut butter and breadcrumbs, and calling it dinner, all drawn from home economics bulletins of the late 1930s and early 40s. Picture a jiggling loaf of gelatin wrapped around slices of Bologna, served cool, and somehow accepted in dining rooms thanks to the era's propaganda that jelly could be dinner. Consider a spice cake made entirely from condensed tomato soup. No milk, no butter, and still moist and tender, thanks to Campbell's promotions during World War II. These dishes weren't just odd, they were smart. They turned hunger into habit, shaming waste out of the kitchen, and created meals from what most people now throw away. They were food sovereignty in disguise, carried out with wry pride in cramped pantries and on ration lines. So here's what's coming next. For each of these 10 dishes, we dive in. We'll tell you where it came from, why it mattered, how it listens to the beat of survival over hyper-branded hunger, and yes, why some taste weird in modern mouths but deserve a second look. They called it mock apple pie, a name meant to raise eyebrows, even suspicion. But what if I told you that this pie, which looks, smells, and even tastes like apple pie, contains no apples whatsoever? Instead, its star ingredient is a box of Ritz crackers, broken, sweetened, and transformed into something irresistibly familiar. This isn't a modern gimmick or food trend. It goes back to the mid-19th century, when home cooks wove magic from pantry scraps, using soda crackers or stale bread, sugar, spices, and acid to imitate fruit pie mush or cracker pie. One recipe appeared as early as 1857 in the Saturday Evening Post. Fast forward to 1934. Ritz crackers, priced around 19 cents, a pound box, and crispy buttery, burst onto the scene just as apple prices soared during the Depression. By the next year, Nabisco began printing a recipe for mock apple pie on the back of the cracker box. Not as a trick, but as a lifeline, a dessert that required no orchard, no fruit taxes, only pantry staples. Making the illusion work wasn't sorcery. It was savvy chemistry. Crushed crackers simmered in a simple syrup of sugar, water, and cream of tartar mimic the fibrous apple texture, while lemon juice adds gloss and brightness. Cinnamon makes it red as familiar apple to the mind. The result? A filling that pulls off pie-like stretch without fruit. The recipe stayed on Ritz boxes well into the 1980s, becoming a cornerstone in Depression-era kitchen lore. In the 1960s and 70s, nostalgia for this boxed recipe surged. People still remembered the taste of comfort in 40-cent slices. Yet supermarkets were always silent. Why sell fresh apples or pie filling when families could turn saltine crackers into dessert? This was food independence, disguised in a golden brown crust. Brace yourselves for what might be the weirdest staple in American cupboard lore. Look at that cookbook card. Boiled ham, peeled bananas wrapped mustard side in, bathed in cheese sauce, baked for half an hour at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Serve hot. 6 servings. It reads like a dare disguised as dinner. This dish first appeared in a Chiquita banana promotional cookbook from 1947, published by the United Fruit Company, Chiquita's predecessor. Their marketing goal? Make the banana no longer exotic, but American pantry regular. Gilded breakfast to ground meat sandwiches. Included on those pages, alongside broiled bananas with curry or Jell-O banana molds, was ham banana rolls with cheese sauce, an extreme case of corporate kitchen wizardry that turned tropical fruit into American daily fare. No wonder eating it felt controversial. As one blog testing mid-century recipes put it, this is the 1950 version with cheese sauce, The 1973 Hollandaise version, later published by McCall's, is a step too far. Mustard slathered ham wrapped around bananas? Then a pint of American cheese sauce poured over it all, baked until the bananas collapse and the edges crisp. What did it actually taste like? Bananas, used minimally ripe, all yellow or slightly green. Not soft sweet, but starchy. More like baked artichoke than dessert fruit. Ham, salty and taut. The flavor comes more from the wrap than the fruit inside. Mustard, a tiny tang of vinegar to cut richness. Cheese sauce, American cheese melted into a bechamel, bland and buttery, but the glue that holds it all together. Food writers who tried it weren't sure how to rate it. Paste magazine called it surprisingly not offensive, reminding us that slathering butter on anything helps. But it left most tasters bewildered. A kid's party joke turned into dinner, but still edible in some warped culinary universe. This dish survived on home economics recipe cards and brand marketing, not because it was beloved, but because it was cheap, shelf-stable, and made bananas work during times when fruit was a luxury. Meet Jellied Bologna Loaf, a mid-century marvel that looks like cold deli meat and tastes like pea soup jam and aspic. It peered smugly from every church potluck and supermarket campaign platter and whispered, "I'm fancy, even if I'm still shelf-stable." Believe it or not, this dish dates back to around 1944, featured in Super Supper Salad Loaf, recipe spreads in women's magazines and corporate promotions. The loaf was technically a Bologna shell, salvaged from sliced cold cuts and hollowed out, then packed with a mixture of mashed green peas, mayonnaise, onion, and sweetened gelatin. The mold would tighten and chill into a gleaming centerpiece. Modernity, frozen in motion, served to dinner guests with wide eyes. Home economics teachers loved it. 1 pound of Bologna plus pudding peas equals 6 generous servings. The gelatin binding did more than set the peas. It was a flag of invention during rationing. Hardly glamorous, it was proud of its stretch and save logic. Why buy fresh roast when you could hollow and reform leftovers under a gelatin sheen? Here's what was in the original recipe. A square-cut shell from 1½ lbs unsliced Bologna. Precisely 1¼ cups cooked mashed peas. 1 tablespoon real mayonnaise. A dash of minced onion, salt, pepper. Dissolved gelatin steeped in hot water. All packed in a Bologna and chilled until firm. How did it taste? Imagine a slice of cold, chewy Bologna, studded with pea fluff and sweet tart suspension juice, and topped with a generous dollop of mayonnaise. Reddit reactions put it bluntly. You had me at scoop out center of a 1½ pound piece of Bologna, and pea jelly. Absolutely wretched looking, but fascinating. For housewives juggling budgets and time, this gelatin loaf was a showstopper. Inexpensive, shelf-safe, and sealable until guests arrived. It bridged appearances and frugality. A cold gelatin mold symbolized modern refrigeration and industrial pantries, things once reserved for upper-class kitchens. Of course, Bologna had no glamour, and gelatin didn't age well in warm pantries. By the late 1960s, that wobbling loaf was on death's door, pulled by fresh-produced marketing and a cultural move towards salads without peas or shapes of meat. In the 80s and 90s, few people remembered how to set food in Jell-O without smiling at its presentation woes. Still, somewhere in Midwest church basements, a loaf may still loop, sliced for reluctant tasters and served with a trembling sense of nostalgia. Once a symbol of resourcefulness, now a relic of culinary history. They dumped Campbell's tomato soup in a cake batter and created something surprisingly sweet. It sounds like kitchen folklore until you taste it. This was not an accident or a viral meme. It started in the early 1920s, long before apple pies or chocolate gates took center stage in American women's magazines. Early printed versions trace back to Campbell's proprietary recipe in 1922, billed as a frugal alternative during rationing decades earlier. By 1939, cookbooks and newspaper columns were calling it a magic cake, using condensed tomato soup instead of eggs, cream, or milk. The soup's gelatinous starches and tomato pectin locked in moisture, acting like a low-fat sponge that held up even when butter was scarce. What suddenly lacked an obvious tomato flavor, it made up for an aromatic spice and warm nostalgia. Redditors remember it well. Tomato soup cake is not tomatoey at all. It is like a rich spice cake. That's no surprise. Recipes called for cinnamon, allspice, cloves, and sometimes raisins or nuts. Combined with a can of soup, a bit of Crisco and sugar, and the cake baked into a glossy, crusted loaf that fooled palates for decades. Campbell's kept the recipe on label backs through the 50s and 60s. In fact, they reported that 65,000 people a year still Google it today. Proof that this cake never really stopped being relevant. Why did supermarkets downplay it? Because this slice of pantry ingenuity undermined the need for eggs, butter, or fancy dessert mixes. It said, I can bake from the shelf without the dairy aisle. And that was exactly the kind of independence mass-produced food systems didn't promote. What felt like step-by-step. Soda meets soup. You stir baking soda into the condensed soup. Watch it foam like soda bread batter. Sugar and shortening. You cream sugar with fat, then whisk in the soup mixture until it glows with rust-brown spice. Dry meats wet. Flour blended with cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and optional raisins folds in like autumn leaves. Bake and frost. At 350 degrees Fahrenheit, it rises in 35 to 40 minutes, slowing into a soft crust. Then, if fortunate, cream cheese frosting gets spread over the filmy top, studded with walnut halves. In context, sturdy enough for church bake sales in small-town America, subtle enough to still make grown-ups smirk when reminded of its secret ingredient. This cake was both dessert and disguise. Rarely called a joke, more often a whispered tip at potlucks. They called it hollowed onions with peanut butter, and no, it doesn't taste better than it sounds. These avocado brown, baked onions, each spoonful with peanut butter and breadcrumbs, were born the Bureau of Home Economics mid-depression menus, suggested in home economics pamphlets and magazines as a high-calorie, high-protein meal on a dime a day. Why this uncanny pairing? Onions were cheap, every day. Peanut butter was widely stocked for its fat-calorie density. For families who had lost orchard access and meat rations, stuffing an onion's core with peanut butter symbolized resourcefulness. And during the worst years of 1929 to 1939, endurance disguised in mustard-smiled desperation. Here's how you made it. Hollow a large cooking onion, leaving a shell 1/8 inch thick. Stuff with equal parts peanut butter and stale breadcrumbs. Tiny oil-stained plumes of bread soaking starch settle into sun-dry mash center. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for around 1 hour, until the onion softens, the peanut butter bulges slightly, and the exterior caramelizes into translucent sweetness. What did it taste like? That's hard to figure. Modern tasters admitted bluntly. That sounds pretty gross. Wasn't horrible, but definitely wasn't great. Still, desperate kitchens didn't bat an eye. It was cheap, filling, and kept hunger off the table without meat. But supermarkets stayed silent. If home cooks learned they could turn onions into dinners with peanut butter, not chicken or canned ham, they'd skip the grocery shelf. So these recipes faded, quietly tucked behind glossy ads selling real protein, funded by rising post-war industrial farming. In an era where food sovereignty was more survival tactic than trend, this dish embodied calculated sacrifice masked as innovation. What if a head of cabbage, humble, cheap, completely ordinary, could be transformed into the centerpiece of the church basement buffet? Imagine tossing shredded cabbage, some chopped celery, and pimiento into a lemony pool of gelatin. You chill it in a ring mold until set, and there it is, a glistening cabbage jelly ring that looks expensive, tastes tangy, and cost only pennies. This wasn't novelty. It was dinner table magic, and it nearly vanished. Historical backstory, 015 to 110. Gelatin salads like this first burst into American kitchens in 1904. A Pennsylvania homemaker, Mrs. John E. Cook, won third prize in a Knox gelatin contest with a cold salad of cabbage, celery, and red pepper suspended in plain lemon aspic, what she called perfection salad. Over the next 2 decades, it became a church potluck staple across the country. By the 1940s and 50s, you saw molded vegetable salads transformed into sculptural rings and fluted molds that could feed a crowd and craze the social pages. What made people love it? 3 reasons: frugality, visual finesse, and flavor. Cabbage was cheap and often grown in kitchen gardens. No fat, no meat, just crisp freshness mystified by gelatin. The clear lemon base looked elegant. A ring mold gave it presence, more show than store-bought sides ever did. And the crunch. Every bite snapped, even though it had been suspended in jelly for hours. Kids could help shred and layer. Mothers could make it a day ahead. And against rising food costs, it stretched the meal. The base: unflavored gelatin, sugar, salt, a splash each of boiling water, cold water, lemon juice, and a bit of vinegar. Let it chill until the consistency of thick egg white. Then gently stir in 2 cups finely shredded cabbage, 1 cup chopped celery, 2 tablespoons chopped pimento or diced green pepper. Pour into a ring mold. Rinse the mold with cold water first, so it releases easily later. Chill until fully firm, usually 3 to 4 hours, sometimes overnight. Unmold onto lettuce-lined platter. Garnish with olives or carrot curls. A classic swirl of cold mayonnaise or creamy French dressing arrives. Often serve in a dish aligned with each slice. In the Depression and post-war era, cabbage jelly ring represented efficiency, using vegetables that lasted, making the humble elegant and turning scarcity into style. But as supermarkets began packaging lettuce, shredded coleslaw, and fresh-cut sides in plastic tubs, the old gelatin abuses quietly vanished. Few in-store branding saw upside in telling families to make salad from scratch. The gelatin manufacturers stopped promoting savory molds. Refrigerators replaced the need for cold aspic. And most of the people who'd learned that trick growing up never taught it to the next generation. Today, when store-bought lettuce goes limp before you use it, or the price of vegetables sends you flinching at every expense, this ring makes sense again. Use crisp cabbage you picked up on the side of the road that looks sad in your fridge and turn it into something gourmet. It's vintage sustainability wrapped in gelatin. Zero waste, low cost, high wow factor, and still really good. Here's how your grandmother would have made the perfection salad. 2 envelopes of unflavored gelatin is softened in 1 cup cold water, then dissolved in 1.5 cups boiling water nearly to simmer. You stir in half a cup sugar, half a cup vinegar, 2 tablespoons lemon juice, and a teaspoon of salt. Then let the mix cool while stirring until it's about the thickness of unbeaten egg whites. That's your cue to move quickly. Next, fold in the stars. 1.5 cups finely shredded cabbage, 1.5 cups diced celery, 1/4 cup chopped green pepper, and 1/4 cup pimiento. Make sure everything is evenly coated before transferring to a 6-cup ring mold brushed with cold water. Jellied salads love a clean release. Now cover and chill for at least 3 hours, ideally overnight, until the gelatin clicks away from the edge cleanly. Use the sharpest shredder you can find for the cabbage. Tiny ribbons melt the right way among the gel. Stir slowly when cabbage is added. Too fast, and the gelatin traps air pockets you'll see later like tiny bubbles. For release, dip the mold in warm water just long enough to loosen the sides. Then invert onto a lettuce-lined platter with confidence. This mold did more than look good. It was food preservation in plain sight. Packed with veggies, held by cool gelatin, it stayed fresh in the fridge for days. In an era before crisper drawers, mold was modern innovation, and cooling meant survival. Knox's win in the 1905 recipe contest lit the fuse for thousands of variants, from perfection salad itself to meats, fruits, and even snails and aspic all around the world. But as fresh produce became cheaper and suburban imaginations turned to toss salads, these gelatin rings became resumes, relics of 1950s food marketing and pin-up housewives culture. By the late 1960s, most home economics cookbooks quietly dropped savory molds entirely. One reporter called it a design fad hiding a sugar-shock diet. When you slice through that gelatin ring today, every crispy celery ribbon and crunchy cabbage flake is a testament to grit. Think zero-waste pantry cooking, economy over excess, and creativity under pressure. It isn't nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's a blueprint. Cabbage that's getting slimy in the fridge? Don't compost it. Preserve it in lemon wash gel. Hire a ring mold. Twist your phone off. This next generation might call it conversation starter or vintage chic. But for you, it's smart cooking with history built into every layer. That jewel-shimmering liver mold you see, soft pink and glossy, winking with aspic on its surface, was once the star of potlucks, luncheons, even church dinners. Chicken liver salad set in gelatin, crowned with hard-boiled egg rings or celery curls. Not elegant, perhaps, but powerful in its pack-and-chill logic. In the 1950s, when refrigeration and powdered gelatin became household standards, molded salads reigned on dining tables. Savory aspics featuring meat, eggs, cheese, even liver, became symbols of resourceful kitchens balancing flavor, frugality, and form. Post-war America saw liver as a nutrient-dense, inexpensive protein. Home economics cookbooks and food ads pitched molded chicken liver salad as a way to make a little liver go a long way. Pureed, patted with finely chopped celery or mayonnaise, packed into a ring mold, then chilled until firm enough to slice and serve. Here's how it was made. Chicken liver sautéed or briefly boiled until tender, then milled together with minced onion, hard-cooked egg, cream or mayonnaise, and sometimes vinegar or chopped pickles. Gelatin, either straight from a packet or dissolved in rich broth, was folded in to bind it all. After pouring into a 6-cup ring mold, you'd chill it for hours until it set into cold, sliceable firmness. The taste was surprising. Gentle liver flavor softened with Swedish egg and onion, firm yet yielding in the mouth. Proof that gelatin is more than dessert. It's culinary glue that made the scarce pantry into feastable form. By the late 1960s, gelatin molds began to vanish as supermarkets pushed fresh salads, fruit cocktail mixes, and protein snacks. Home economics shelves dropped gelatin recipes. And though innovators once called aspic a signature of modernity, marketers stopped selling industrial gelatin as main course salad glue. On Reddit today, curious tasters ask, why was everything in Jell-O back then? That's not rhetorical. It was widespread. As someone pointed out, gelatin was a preserver, a way to keep air out and food safe when you didn't waste anything. Try this now. Thin slice of chilled liver mold, sharp vinegar cracker beside it. You taste cold preservation and clever cooking. Organ meat turned elegant in gelatin. Rich nutrition made presentable. It's each gelatin layer's statement of survival and thrift. If you grew up watching car cakes or jelly rings set at church potlucks, this might make you wince. But it's also labor-saving sophistication. Liver that would spoil was saved. Scarce fat became foie gras, like smoothness. Pride disguised in a mold. Ever seen a hot dog turn into an ocean creature? Behold the hot dog octopus, a simple boomerang trick that turns plain lunch into whimsical dinner theater. Slice, boil, and it wakes up with tentacles that curl into cartoon legs. It's mid-century ingenuity meeting childhood delight. This quirky hack first surfaced in Japanese bento culture in the 1970s, where parents sliced sausages into octopus shapes to make kids want to eat lunch. Today in Japan, they're called teiko-sen wieners, octopus sausages, and are just as common in school lunches as rice balls and pickles. But it snuck into post-war American kids' food through novelty cookbooks and party menus, often as an excuse to stick mac and cheese under a smiling creature, or poke smiles into mashed potatoes with mustard eyes. Here's the classic move. Slice a pre-cooked hot dog or short Japanese sausage, about 3/4 down from the rounded head, then rotate and cut again. 4 cuts create 8 strips that transform into legs, once boiled or pan-fried. As the edges fray in the heat, they curl dramatically. Some parents even dot sesame seeds or mustard spots for little eyes, or draw faces to coax giggles out of plain meat. We call octodogs laughing sausages. Makes them more special and conducive to memory making, like esmores. This trick traveled in brown paper lunchboxes and corner diners more than grocery store ads. It appealed only where parents cooked lunches or potlucks demanded smiles. As children aged and lunchboxes turned digital, Octopus hot dogs faded from mainstream menus. No brand could market, make meals fun, use our hot dog, without replacing the entire fridge. Now hot dogs are sleek in buns. Bento art took over, but the memory of curling arms still flickers in retro cookbooks and viral lunch trends. Try making one now. Slice, boil, or pan-fry lightly until the legs splay. Serve with ketchup under the sea, or Nestle them atop mac and cheese or rice. It's quick, cheap, and deeply satisfying when nostalgia meets craft. This isn't haute cuisine, but it is kitchen theater. A reminder that playful food equals emotional food. And when kids remember lunches not for nutrition, but for smiles, they remember the cook. In the strange world of mid-century salads, few creations drew such puzzled forks as the banana and ham salad. Yes, bananas, wrapped in cold slices of baked ham. The recipe first made waves in 1940s homemaking magazines, where adventurous editors pushed the boundaries of sweet and savory pairings. It was meant to feel exotic, a tropical-inspired dish on a dime, marrying the post-war obsession with canned fruits and processed meats. Here's how it worked. A whole, peeled banana was laid inside a slice of thin ham, usually leftover from Sunday dinner or bought deli thin from the butcher. You'd roll it up like a cigar, then secure it with a toothpick. On top, a drizzle of creamy mustard or mayonnaise-based dressing, often spiked with lemon juice or pineapple syrup. Sometimes it sat on a bed of iceberg lettuce. Sometimes, horrifyingly, on a slice of molded Jell-O. The flavor? Confusing. Your brain expected breakfast, but your tongue got Sunday potluck. To modern eaters, it feels like a dare. But back then, it was elegant. Served at women's luncheons, bridge clubs, and PTA meetings. Homemakers believed they were offering something refined and international. After all, it had fruit and meat. That meant sophistication. And yet, this was a dish that never quite earned a second helping. Still, banana and ham salad stands as a shining, slippery symbol of an era desperate for flair on a frugal budget. A time when creativity in the kitchen wasn't optional, it was survival. And if you thought this salad was strange, wait till you see what they did with seafood and gelatin. There's one sandwich that still sparks internet debates, kitchen side-eyes, and deep childhood memories. The infamous peanut butter and mayo sandwich. Yes, you heard that right. A thick smear of peanut butter, a generous swipe of mayonnaise, pressed together between 2 slices of soft white bread. That was it. No jelly, no pickles, no irony. This odd pairing first took hold during the Great Depression, when calorie-dense, shelf-stable ingredients became the heroes of the American pantry. Peanut butter delivered protein and fat. Mayonnaise brought moisture and tang. Together, it was survival on sliced bread. But here's the thing. People didn't just tolerate it. Some loved it. The sandwich quietly persisted through the 40s and 50s, showing up in brown paper lunch bags, lunch counters, and even on church potluck tables. In old community cookbooks, you'll find variations that make the combo even wilder. Add lettuce for crunch, raisins for sweetness, or even sliced bananas. And in the South, this was a comfort food. To outsiders, it's revolting. To some Midwesterners and Southerners, it's home. What makes this sandwich so unforgettable is how honest it is. No flair, no disguise. Just 2 humble condiments stacked together out of need, and maybe, somehow, out of odd genius. Today, it survives as a culinary dare, a relic of kitchen ingenuity, and a reminder that taste is often just a story we tell ourselves. So before you judge, take a bite. And if this sandwich shocked you, wait till you see what folk are doing with Spam and canned peaches. Subscribe now, because the rabbit hole of forgotten food history goes much deeper than you think.